The room spun as I clutched the edge of the polished oak table, my vision blurring from the sudden wave of dizziness that hit me like a freight train. Gasps echoed around the boardroom as my knees buckled, and I felt myself falling toward the cold marble floor. Then Nina's voice cut through the chaos like a blade, steady and unyielding. The merger is happening today, and Hannah is not just my rival, she's the love of my life. Everything went black for a second, but the words hung in the air, louder than any applause or stock ticker I'd ever heard. When my eyes fluttered open, the faces of 12 executives stared down at me, a mix of shock and confusion twisting their features. My assistant, Marcus, was already on his knees beside me, offering water, but I couldn't focus on him. All I could see was Nina standing at the head of the table, her tailored navy suit sharp as ever, her dark hair pulled back in that no-nonsense chignon she wore like armor. Apex Innovation's CEO had just detonated a bomb in the middle of our quarterly strategy session, and the explosion was only beginning. I tried to push myself up, but my arms shook. "Nina, what the hell?" I whispered, though it came out hoarse. The room was dead silent now, the kind of silence that follows a confession no one saw coming. We had spent 4 years building walls between Summit Tech and Apex, two of the biggest AI firms in New York, snapping at each other in boardrooms and outbidding on every major contract. Rivals. Enemies in the press. That was the story we sold the world so no one would suspect the truth we shared in quiet hotel rooms and late-night drives up the Hudson. Nina didn't flinch. She met my gaze with those piercing green eyes that had first pulled me in during a charity gala 3 years ago. "You collapsed because you've been carrying this secret alone too long, Hannah. I'm done pretending. The merger protects both companies, and it protects us." Her voice was calm, professional, the same tone she used to close million-dollar deals. But I heard the undercurrent, the one only I recognized after 1,000 stolen moments. Security helped me to a chair, while murmurs rippled through the room. Someone called for a doctor. Someone else whispered about PR damage control. I wanted to scream that this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Our relationship had started as a reckless night after too much champagne and too many heated arguments at an industry conference in Chicago. We had sworn it would stay hidden, a private rebellion against the worlds we came from. Mine, strict evangelical parents in Ohio who still sent me weekly Bible verses. Hers, old-school Italian Catholic family in Brooklyn who measured success by grandkids and Sunday Mass. But now the secret was public, and the merger she had just forced through would bind our companies, our lives, and every future decision together. I clutched the armrest, heart hammering. This was supposed to be a routine meeting about market share. Instead, it felt like the first day of a war I wasn't ready to fight. By the time the paramedics arrived, the news had already leaked. My phone buzzed with alerts. Rival CEOs collapse and confess in shocking boardroom twist. I glanced at Nina across the table as they checked my vitals. She looked composed, but I saw the slight tremble in her fingers, the only sign she was as terrified as I was. We had always known the truth would hurt someone. We just never imagined it would start with me on the floor, and her voice claiming me in front of the entire industry. The doctor cleared me with a warning about stress and dehydration. As the room emptied, Nina approached, her hand hovering near my shoulder before she thought better of it. "We need to talk," she said quietly. I nodded, but inside I was already calculating the cost. Lost contracts, furious investors, and worst of all, the phone call I would have to make to my mother in Ohio before she saw it on the evening news. That night, in the back of a tinted SUV heading to my apartment in Tribeca, the weight of what she had done settled over me like a lead blanket. 4 years of careful distance, of smiling through press conferences while secretly meeting in airport lounges, gone in 30 seconds. "Why now?" I asked, voice cracking. Nina stared out the window at the glittering skyline. "Because watching you push yourself until you literally fell apart was killing me. I love you, Hannah. And I'm tired of loving you in the shadows." Her words should have warmed me. Instead, they terrified me. Because loving her had always meant choosing between the faith I was raised in and the woman who made me feel truly seen. And now the choice was public. The next morning, my inbox was a battlefield. Headlines screamed from every tech blog and business wire. Summit Tech and Apex Innovations merge in dramatic fashion, with a personal twist. Analysts debated whether the move was genius or career suicide. Investors wanted emergency calls. And my mother had left 3 voicemails, each one more strained than the last. I sat at my kitchen island, coffee untouched, replaying the boardroom scene on loop. Nina had stayed over, sleeping on the couch out of respect for the emotional minefield between us. She emerged from the guest room in one of my old Harvard sweatshirts, hair loose for once, looking more like the woman I fell for than the cutthroat CEO the world feared. "Coffee?" she asked softly. We talked for hours that morning, the kind of conversation we had avoided for months. She explained her reasoning. The merger wasn't impulsive. Apex had been quietly buying shares in Summit for 6 months. The collapse was just the catalyst. "I saw you fading, Hannah. The late nights, the panic attacks you thought I didn't notice. Pretending we were enemies was supposed to protect us, but it was destroying you." I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. The double life had become unbearable. Yet the way she had ripped the curtain down without warning felt like betrayal. "You outed me to the entire company," I said, voice rising. "My family doesn't even know yet. My father still forwards me sermons about the gay agenda. You think a press release is going to fix that?" Nina's face tightened, but she didn't back down. "Hiding was your idea. I respected it because I love you. But love shouldn't require you to pass out from the stress of it." Her words stung because they echoed the quiet voice in my own head during Sunday calls home, when Mom asked if I was dating a nice Christian boy yet. We spent the day in strategy sessions with our combined legal teams, hammering out merger details while the world speculated about our secret lesbian relationship. The term felt clinical and exposing at the same time. By evening, I drove to my parents' hotel. They had flown in after seeing the news. Dad hugged me stiffly. Mom's eyes were red. "Is this true, Hannah? Are you with her?" The question carried decades of Sunday school lessons, prayer circles, and the unspoken fear that their only daughter was straying from the narrow path. I tried to explain how Nina wasn't just a phase, how our love had grown from respect to something deeper than any sermon had prepared me for. Mom listened, hands folded in her lap like she was in church. "We love you, but this life, it's not God's design. We're praying you'll come back to the truth." Dad said nothing, just stared at the floor, the weight of his silence heavier than any lecture. When I returned to the apartment, Nina was waiting. We argued for the first time without the buffer of secrecy. "Your family's reaction is exactly why we stayed hidden," I snapped. She countered. "And your family's reaction proves we can't keep hiding forever. Traditions are beautiful until they demand you erase yourself." Neither of us was entirely wrong. Her words challenged the foundation I had built my life on. Yet my fear of losing my parents was real and raw. That night we sat on the balcony overlooking the city, shoulders touching but not quite embracing. For the first time since the collapse, I let myself feel the relief underneath the terror. No more lying. No more separate hotel rooms. But the cost was already mounting. 2 board members had resigned, citing moral concerns, and my mother had asked for time to pray before speaking again. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of press conferences, investor calls, and family therapy sessions my parents insisted on. The merged company, now called Horizon Dynamics, had to prove the move wasn't just personal drama. Nina and I worked side by side in the new executive suite, our desks facing each other like a mirror of everything we had hidden. I started seeing a therapist recommended by the company's HR, Dr. Patel, who gently unpacked the layers of guilt I carried. "You're not choosing between love and faith," she said. "You're learning that faith can evolve." But evolution felt like betrayal to the girl who once led youth group Bible studies. Nina's family reacted differently. Her mother, Nana Rosa, invited us both to Brooklyn for Sunday dinner. The table was loud with cousins and aunts, and though a few glances lingered, no one preached. "Love is love," Nana said simply, passing me extra lasagna. The contrast with my parents' pained silence cut deeper than I expected. One evening, Nina found me in the office after hours, staring at an old photo on my phone. Of me at 19, arms raised in worship at a summer camp. "You look happy there," she said softly. I admitted. I believed every word. She sat beside me. "I don't want to take that away from you. I just want room for both." We talked until dawn about scripture and science, about the God I still prayed to quietly, and the woman I couldn't imagine living without. The conversation wasn't about winning, it was about surviving the tension. Meanwhile, the business side grew complicated. A major client, a conservative Christian media conglomerate, threatened to pull their contract unless we issued a clarifying statement, distancing the merger from our relationship. Nina wanted to fight. I wanted to protect jobs. We compromised on a neutral press release, but the decision left both of us uneasy. Is this how it starts? I asked her later. Compromising pieces of ourselves to keep the peace? She didn't have an answer. My father called one night. Your mother cries every day, he said. She thinks we failed you somehow. The guilt nearly crushed me. I drove to Ohio the next weekend alone, sitting in the same church pew where I had once felt safe. The pastor's sermon on standing firm in truth felt aimed at me. On the drive back, I realized the real conflict wasn't between Nina and my faith. It was between the version of me my family needed and the version I was becoming. Nina met me at the airport with flowers and no questions. That small gesture reminded me why I had risked everything. But as we drove into the city, I wondered how many more gestures it would take to heal the fractures spreading through every part of my life. The first major board meeting of the merged company arrived like a storm. Analysts watched our every move, waiting for cracks. Nina presented the new AI ethics framework with her usual precision, but when a shareholder asked pointedly about personal distractions affecting leadership, the room tensed. I answered calmly. Our personal lives have never interfered with our professional judgment, and they won't now. The words tasted like ash. Because they had interfered, every late night worrying about being discovered had chipped away at my focus until I collapsed. Afterward, Nina pulled me into her office. You don't have to defend us like that. I snapped back. Someone has to. Your grand announcement didn't leave me much choice. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising in the glass-walled space where anyone could see. She accused me of still wanting the closet. I accused her of forcing my hand before I was ready. In the end we both apologized, exhausted, realizing the real enemy wasn't each other, but the world that demanded we choose sides. My mother flew in unannounced the following week. We met at a quiet cafe in Central Park. She brought a worn Bible, opening it to verses I knew by heart. I'm not here to condemn you, she said, voice trembling. I'm here because I love you too much to watch you walk away from God. I listened as she described her own struggles with doubt as a young woman, how faith had anchored her through loss. Her pain was genuine, not hatred. Yet hearing it forced me to confront the possibility that my happiness might cost her peace. Nina waited outside the cafe, giving us space. When Mom left, I walked into Nina's arms right there on the sidewalk. Passers-by stared, but for once I didn't care. She's not wrong to worry, I whispered. Nina held me tighter. Neither are we for choosing each other. The moment felt like fragile peace amid ongoing war. Business suffered another blow when a key investor group pulled funding, citing reputational risk. We had to lay off 20 people in marketing, good people whose only fault was working for us. The decision haunted me. Nina took the blame publicly, but I knew my hesitation had delayed our response. Responsibility tasted bitter. That night we drove to the beach house we had secretly bought in the Hamptons years ago, the one place no one knew about. Sitting on the sand under a full moon, Nina traced circles on my palm. I thought going public would free us, she admitted. I didn't realize freedom would feel this heavy. I leaned against her, listening to the waves. For the first time, I understood that every choice, hers to speak, mine to hide, carried casualties. Tensions peaked during the annual industry summit in San Francisco. The keynote stage was set for Nina and me to present Horizon's vision together. Backstage, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Your mother had a panic attack after church today. She says the world is celebrating what the Bible calls sin. The words hit like a physical blow. I nearly canceled the speech. Nina noticed my pale face. Whatever it is, we face it together. On stage, under blinding lights, I spoke about innovation and integrity, while my mind screamed. When Nina took the mic, she added a line no one expected. True leadership means bringing your whole self to the table. even when that self challenges expectations. The applause was polite, but the undercurrent in the room felt electric. Afterward, a prominent venture capitalist cornered me. Beautiful speech, but the optics your family's church has been calling our firm. They're worried about values alignment. The implication was clear. Choose business or choose love. I excused myself and found Nina in our hotel suite. We argued fiercely about family, faith, the layoffs, everything we had bottled up. She said my parents' pain was manipulation wrapped in religion. I said her certainty sometimes looked like arrogance. We didn't speak for hours. Then, in the quiet, Nina said, I was wrong to force the timing. But I'm not wrong about us. I cried then, really cried, for the daughter my parents were losing and the woman I was gaining. We held each other through the night, not as CEOs but as two people trying to build something honest on broken ground. The next morning brought worse news. My childhood church had issued a public statement urging prayer for those struggling with same-sex attraction. My mother's name was listed among the signatories. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss. Nina booked us the next flight home, but I insisted on flying to Ohio alone. At my parents' kitchen table, I told them I loved them, I still believed in God, but I also loved Nina. Mom wept. Dad said, we'll always be your parents, but we can't celebrate this. The words felt final. On the plane back, I stared at the clouds and realized something painful. No victory existed here. Only different kinds of loss. 6 months after the collapse, Horizon Dynamics had stabilized. Profits rose, the layoffs were behind us, and the media storm had quieted to occasional whispers. Nina and I moved into a brownstone in Brooklyn, close enough for her family to drop by with food and far enough from my parents' silence. We attended couples counseling, learned to argue without accusations, and slowly rebuilt trust. I started attending a different church, one that welcomed questions and complexity. The sermons didn't erase my doubts, but they gave me space to breathe. Nina supported it without pressure, just as I supported her occasional Sunday Mass with Nana. We were learning that faith and love could coexist, even if imperfectly. My mother called on my birthday. The conversation was short and careful, but she said, I miss you. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a door cracked open. Dad sent a card with no note inside, just a Bible verse about love covering a multitude of sins. I pinned it to our fridge, a reminder that everyone was trying. One crisp autumn evening, Nina and I walked along the Brooklyn promenade. The city lights sparkled across the water, and for the first time since the boardroom, the weight on my chest felt lighter. She stopped, took my hand and said, I'm proud of the woman you're becoming, strong enough to carry both your past and our future. I kissed her then, softly, right there where anyone could see. The kiss tasted like survival. We had lost contracts, strained family ties, and questioned everything we once believed. Yet in the losing, we had found a version of ourselves that felt true. The journey hadn't ended in triumph. It had ended in responsibility, for the pain we caused, the choices we made, and the love we refused to surrender. Looking back at the woman who collapsed that day, I wonder, was forcing the truth into the light the only way to save us both? Or did the cost to our families prove that some secrets were kinder left unspoken?